What we're going to do this morning is to do a kind of a case study / post-mortem on a program called Embarrassing Bodies Live from the Clinic, which you might have caught last Tuesday evening at 8 p.m, or you can catch next Tuesday at 8 p.m, or you can watch it on 4OD. But we'll give plenty of context and background, so if you haven't seen it, not a problem. We're really trying to do a sort of triangular thing here to represent the perspectives of TV indie, digital indie, and commissioner broadcasting organisation. So that's what the three of us will represent, and we'll quickly tell you who we are and what we do. The session, which can run up to 90 minutes. We'll just see how we go. So if I can introduce Alex and Sandra from Maverick on my right, and let them tell you a little bit about their involvement in this project. It's not really a post-mortem because it's very much an ongoing concern. It's doing very well on telly at the moment, and it's doing extremely well online. So, do you want to start?
Yeah.
So I'm Alex Honiewicz, so I'm a multi-platform producer at Maverick TV. I suppose the key thing the point to make is that, as you might have heard, we're both from Maverick Television, even though we're representing TV and digital, and that's quite an interesting setup in itself. We have a multi-platform department within Maverick, which is has been going for about 5 years, and is very much integrated with our television teams. So whereas you may hear from other talks, either today or at other events, you'll have a digital indie and you'll have a TV indie, and they may be separate companies. The important point to make is that Maverick does all of the aspects of this. We are the same company. So, excuse me. I'm the multi-platform producer. Me and Sandra actually do share quite a lot of the role between us because I've been away for a while. But my role is basically to handle the web content and any applications that go with the show, any content which needs to go up onto the site, and generally integrate with the TV team on the actual days of broadcast. So we'll go into a bit more detail as we sort of take you through the process, so just leave it at that for the moment.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra, I'm the senior producer. Before I joined Maverick, I was a commissioning editor for multi-platform at the BBC, and I worked on a lot of factual programmes. And then when I joined Maverick, the first series was just in development, so I joined that pretty much straight away. So I was very involved in the first series with development and working with Skype and trying to organise how to set up a show like this. But I also looked after the website, and I built a few bespoke video players that meant that we could utilise the content that was created in the show online and give viewers more content, more links and apps and things. So throughout the session we'll talk about both of those sides. But thanks for coming.
So, multi-platform TV. I'm the commissioning editor for Factual at Channel 4. My name's Adam G. What I should point out is that this was designed as a spin-off from the very successful features series Embarrassing Bodies, and it was designed originally to that we put quite some distance between the Embarrassing Bodies brand and what this show evolved into. So that's where it kicked off from. What actually happened in reality, I'll try and bring out during the course of this. So to get things rolling, for those that may not have seen the show, we just wanted to show the intro from the series that's currently running, Series 2, which more or less kind of captures what the whole thing's all about and how it works.
Welcome to Embarrassing Bodies Live from the Clinic.
We're looking at a largest hospital for Queen Elizabeth reburning by using internet technology to open our doors to anyone watching from home.
So, if you want to see us tonight, get online and Skype in for an appointment now.
There really is no excuse not to see a doctor. Embarrassing Body's live clinic is now open, and tonight you can see a doctor out of hours without having to book time off work or leave your own home.
Our waiting room is already filling up with people who've made an appointment. So if you want to join them, get in touch now.
Just go to the website, follow the links, and you could be on the show tonight.
It stings, it burns, it feels like I'm urinating razor blades.
I suffer with diarrhea every day.
I've been getting cysts on the back of my neck for about 8 years.
If you want to speak to us, get online now at channel4.com/clinic.
Helping us out in the studio every week are some of the city's GPs offering their advice via webcam.
Also in the studio tonight, we have top reconstructive breast surgeon Patrick Minucci. So ladies, whatever you're worried, do get in touch.
Welcome to Embarrassing Bodies live from the clinic.
We're in the UK's largest hospital.
So that gives you a sort of a feel for it. It's a prime time, 8 p.m. features show, a health show. It's got a real kind of emphasis on sort of preventive approach to healthcare. It's kind of quite noisy on the surface, but it has a lot of impact, which you'd sort of consider public value. And most importantly, it's live. So you can start watching it like that at 8 o'clock, and you can have been on the show by 9 o'clock. I think it would be quite good to go back to the origin. So if I can ask you guys where it came from.
Yeah, so the origins actually started in to explain, Embarrassing Bodies as a TV show in its current form has been around since 2007, 2008. It actually started off as a one-off series of documentaries in 2000, but it was a very different show then. It was a much more kind of what you would call a traditional single obdoc. But in 2007, it was sort of relaunched, rebranded as a factual feature, as a factual entertainment show. Alongside that, we talked to Adam about launching a website, which was going to be a sort of web portal where people could go on, find out more information about the medical conditions that were featured in the show, and also provide a bit of extra content that was kind of, that you couldn't do through the TV show. Some things, certain sort of risk checkers and health checkers that we thought would be interesting. The website was incredibly successful. I mean, we were talking, I've got figures sort of later on, but I mean, to give you an idea, since the website has been live, it's had over 20 million visitors, over 165 million page views. I mean, that's over several sort of years, but it is, for a show in this kind of sort of genre, those sorts of numbers are pretty impressive by anyone's count. And that website has always been there, and we've added content to it as we've gone along. And we had an idea in 2010 that we'd like to do something live on the website. And that we were very keen on the idea. There was a lot of content that people were sharing online, lots of questions they were asking, and we couldn't really answer those through the website because we're not doctors. But of course we have 3 doctors that are in the show, and we thought, how could we facilitate them actually answering the audience's questions rather than just producing a show each week, which is obviously shot 6 months in advance and has to inevitably be editorialized. And that's really where the origins of Live from the Clinic came from, as Embarrassing Bodies Live. And it was a very different type of show. It was a web only. It ran after the traditional Embarrassing Bodies show, so it actually went out at 9 o'clock in the evening. And it was only online. It was trailed at the end of the show, or the beginning and end of the show, but you had to go onto the website and actually watch it online. But by watching it online, you could also interact with it as well. You could submit questions. You could vote which questions you wanted to be asked of the ones that had already been submitted. You could send in photos with your own medical problems, which, again, could be voted on by the people watching. And the most popular questions were sent into the studio for the doctors to answer. So it was completely user-generated. The editorial was completely generated by the users. And that's where things started. In fact, we've actually got a clip which kind of... we actually put together a clip which was which covers the origins. It also covers a bit more of the wider context of the Live from the Clinic site, so what it went into. So I think it might be useful now to show that clip. It's about 4 minutes long.
The one thing I'd say by way of intro to that, is that Live from the Clinic actually is quite a kind of landmark, I think, in factual multi-platform, because it's one of the very first instances where a digital commission has given rise to further television. So you've got this kind of iterative cycle represented here, where you've got Embarrassing Bodies, started life as a regular short documentary series, became a really successful format, gave rise to this Embarrassing Bodies Live online switchover show, and that in turn gave rise to Live from the Clinic as a TV series. So that process of digital to TV just hasn't happened much yet, but we'll see more of it. But in that regard, it's quite a sort of landmark. So if we could watch the second clip, please, the back one.
Welcome to Embarrassing Bodies Live from the Clinic, where you can get instant medical advice via webcam without even having to leave your sofa. I'm Dr.
Your very own personal health service is open now, and tonight you can speak to us live. You can call in via webcam. I think I know what's wrong with you, Joe. Michelle, how can we help?
As you can see, I've got very large breasts.
I seem to have some white patches on my penis.
Let's have a look.
Right. Oh, okay. I've got it now. Okay. Stand up and show us your tummy a second.
I think you've got the world's biggest ingrowing hair.
Quite clearly, Michelle would benefit enormously from a breast reduction. I mean, it would be a life-changing operation.
Live from the Clinic started life in 2010 as Embarrassing Bodies Live, a UK first, as an online-only switchover show on the Channel 4 website, which allowed users to dictate the editorial of the show as it broadcast. It picked up a BAFTA, a Broadcast Digital Award, and an Emmy nomination, and in 2011, this online project became a live, interactive and groundbreaking primetime Channel 4 show with its own major multi-platform presence. Viewers applied through the Live from the Clinic website to be seen live over webcam during the show. More than 60 patients were seen in this way across the series. On the website, these cases were made available as interactive videos, allowing users to create a shopping basket of resources most applicable to them, which they could in turn email to themselves. Further video content from the show was also made interactive, demonstrating potential functionality for YouView and other connected TVs.
So, for anyone who's embarrassed, shy, scared, or just too busy to book for a smear, I'm going to have mine now.
Okay, Dawn.
Okay.
Ready for your test?
I am.
Got a little bit of lubrication on the speculum, and I'm going to pop it in. It shouldn't hurt, as you know, it's just a bit fiddly. Would you give me a cough? Now, you know this brush, it's really soft, isn't it? I'm just going to twirl it around, all right?
As the shows aired, users were encouraged to use My Health Checker, taking tests related to subjects across the series. 19 tests were available, ranging from dyslexia, OCD, autism and ADHD, to BMI, body fat percentage and diabetes, produced in partnership with organisations including academic institutions, charities and the NHS. 316,000 users registered, taking 3 million tests, an average engagement of more than 9 tests per user, and a huge secure data capture operation using cloud hosting. Along with receiving detailed feedback and advice, users could compare their results anonymously with others. Our partner organisations, including Warwick University Medical School, Cambridge Autism Research Centre and IBM, then utilised the anonymised data to further their research, and early results were analysed as they came in and reported on the show.
We found those at highest risk of diabetes are aged between 46 and 51, and the occupations at highest risk are those who work in transport, office administration and the public sector. Now, are you surprised by those results, Shaw?
Not really, Dawn. I'm afraid the modern day lifestyle where it's high stress, rapid results required from your boss and sedentary work really set us up as humans to fail.
My Health Checker is also available on NHS sites and to the brand's 180,000 Facebook fans. The series saw the launch of My Video Doctor, an interactive video product built using complex algorithms, allowing users to receive a personalised consultation based on their symptoms from Dr. Christian Jessen, Dr. Dawn Harper and myself, Dr. Pixie McKenna.
If you would like confidential advice about a sexual health problem, you're in the right place.
Through a partnership with NHS Direct, it was possible to calculate the saving to the NHS of each user journey. During the 6-week series, my video doctor saved the NHS up to £323,000, equivalent to 3 ambulances, 15 baby ventilators, or 19,000 pairs of crutches. Since broadcast, the savings continued past £400,000. During and after each show, web chats took place, led by myself and specialists featured in that episode, which then fed into the show itself. The response was phenomenal, with more than 50,000 users asking 20,000 questions.
So it's over to you. What have people been talking to you about?
Lots of heel pain, lots of people
so
suffering
that gives
with this
you a
awful
very
pain.
quick
You first
snapshot.
get
You
out
can
of
see
bed in
there's
the
a lot
morning,
of
it's very
components
sore,
to
so
it, and quite a lot of those things are sort of breaking new ground. But one of the sort of principles I'd pull out of this in terms of thinking about multi-platform in the factual and documentary arena is about what you can bring as a broadcaster and production companies to the party. Because, you know, you can make a really good TV show and people have Twitter and Facebook and social media and they can have a good chat about it and enjoy it on that level. And, you know, that can be okay. So I think as a basic hurdle, you've always got to ask yourself, what can you do that's better than that? And the forerunner of this, Embarrassing Bodies Live, was really testing out that water to give the whole editorial control over to the audience, which is something that Twitter can't do, that Facebook can't do, but Channel 4 and Maverick can do and did do. So all the time you're looking to see what you can bring to the party that's peculiar and particular to this triangular setup. The other thing I think that's really important is, I think you can see from that clip, for all the sort of brashness of big breasts and all that, the public value is pretty obvious. It's obvious in stuff like the smear test clip that you see there, but it's even more obvious when you go online. And if you look on the Embarrassing Bodies site, for example, you only have to spend 5 minutes on there, and you'll quickly see very valuable public value stuff of the kind. I wasn't going to go to the doctor, but I did. I didn't used to check myself, but I do now. I've been checking myself for years, but I've been doing it wrong. Now I know how to do it right. All that kind of stuff is just lying all over the surface of the site. So if you're ever in any doubt about the value of all this brashness and in-your-faceness, just spend 5 minutes on the site and you can see immediately. I think it will be interesting, as Alex pointed out, this is more the exception than the rule. To have one indie that can cover both the TV and the digital stuff is quite rare. There are particular reasons why Maverick has evolved in the way it has, and it's had a very sort of ongoing and long-term relationship with Channel 4 multi-platform. But most of what we're talking about would apply just the same if these two represented two partner but distinct companies. So what would be useful is to understand a bit about how the TV and digital teams work together and fitted together.
Yeah, sure. So as Adam pointed out, we are at Maverick truly integrated, so we sit in the same office, we overlap on lots of projects that Maverick do. And with this production as well, someone from the multi-platform team is embedded in the TV production team, so goes to all the meetings, knows exactly what's going on, is on set. So we always, as two teams, we always know what the other is doing. And I think the best way to illustrate this is how the online content makes a part of the TV show. So on the website, we have these tools like My Health Check and Video Doctor, where people can take tests and learn more about it themselves, and the results are captured. And what we do is the TV show obviously has these amazing Skype cases where people Skype in and there's a great reveal and you learn something new. We take all of those and put those online with additional links. So if it's about eczema, there will be additional links about treatment and resources and things you can do to help yourself. And within those links, there's also links to our tools. So people can take a health checker test that's related, or they can go to the video doctor that's related. So once people have seen the show and they're on the website looking at these video clips, they get obviously deeper and deeper embedded into our content. And then we take the results from those things that the people then do on the website, like the tests they take, and in turn we put that back into the TV show. So for My Health Checker, for example, at the Jubilee weekend we had, or for the show, so we had a urine special, And for that, we took all the results from my health checker about kidney tests and things, and we made that into a data visualization that was then incorporated into the TV show. So I guess my point is we're so closely embedded that we almost can't, I guess, exist without each other, because we need their case videos to get the audience to come to our website, because that's the great content that everyone's talking about, you know, the guy with the ripped penis or what have you. So that the TV show pulls people into us, but then in return we give the TV show lots of facts and figures and stats that then become VT packages in the show. So it's a completely organic, interdependent relationship, which only works because we aren't sitting in different offices, we don't have different agendas. So I think that's what makes programs like this work, is if the team is so closely embedded. And we do actually, I don't know if we want to show it now, but we have a health checker.
Yeah, we could show
visualization.
Sorry, can I just
say,
I just want to sort of pick up on what you're saying there, but that's proven really important, the fact that the teams are in close proximity, because it's allowed for a certain sort of opportunism, which basically was ultimately the thing that fueled the success of Embarrassing Bodies and in turn life from the clinic. It was literally as banal as in an early series where some sequence or item didn't work out properly and they had holes in the show, and the TV team knew what the web guys were up to and said, "Oh, can we use some of your stuff?" Embedded it in the TV and started the ball rolling of what's very much an iterative process. And over the years, so we started off in 2008, you really can't say which is the dog and which is the tail. It's much more of an editorially iterative process. So there have been a whole series of Embarrassing Bodies that have been essentially driven by online activity and by the process, this sort of virtuous circle that Sandra was describing of using the TV as a springboard to online activity, and then, very importantly, completing that loop by feeding back the results of stuff or just descriptions of the activity or product of whatever the call to action was back into the show. And that's really the thing that sort of separates the men from the boys. When you can get stuff that's got that virtuous circle operating within it editorially, then you're into a really good space, at which point it'd be good to go on to that video.
I would say one other thing as well. What Adam's point about us doing sort of certain things online and them going into the show, what was really interesting is in the first series of Embarrassing Bodies, the doctors weren't presenters, they were the talent, but they didn't present to camera, for example. They always talked off camera. It was done in a particular way. And we wanted to create all of these extra videos, and we needed them to talk to camera for that, because it didn't make sense for them to be talking. They needed to be talking down the lens to the viewer. And it wasn't until we did that online that the TV teams looked and they thought, actually, these guys, they should be talking to the audience. They shouldn't be talking off camera. And so that was really good, because by the second series, suddenly the doctors were actually presenting in a whole different way, which was completely driven by the fact that we'd done these web videos. And as Adam says, we made a conscious effort, and Adam put up the money to allow us to actually make these videos in the broadcast standard, not kind of, even a few years ago, it was always the stuff that's on the web. It's shot with a cheap camera. It doesn't need to be lit. You don't need to use any makeup. It doesn't matter because it's only going online. Well, our videos ended up being broadcast, on Channel 4 to 4 million people, and they needed to reach all those standards. And luckily, they already reached those because we wanted it not to be the sort of poorer cousin of the TV show. So what's been good is that started from the very beginning, and we've continued it on now, because obviously our stuff is so integrated that we never know whether a bit of content is going to just end up sort of like being watched online, or whether it's actually going to end up being watched on Channel 4 at 8 o'clock. So.
And this sort of dynamic's very important for keeping the format fresh. So if you're thinking in terms of returning formats, which is a great place if you're interested in making money, they die very quickly, returning formats, if you don't find ways to liven them up. So all the time, this online activity has been a really good catalyst for changes and moving forward. So, for example, Embarrassing Bodies Live, that switchover show, it broke a lot of the rules of the format that had built up. So you never ever saw all three doctors together before that show, and the sort of presenting style that Alex has talked about. So it just got them to sort of rethink some of the things and not to get too stuck in the format, which is such a danger. It also enabled these doctors to get some practice in live presenting. So by the time they came to do the Primetime show, they were way more confident with it. They were good from the off, but they got way better at it by virtue of doing that show. And in terms of putting TV production standards online, you know, that show that we did that was the precursor of this, the production standards were exactly the same as for TV, but then the performance was as well, because it was a switchover show straight after Embarrassing Bodies, but it got an audience that was only sort of 20 or 30,000 short of what Sky One got in that slot on that night. So it was very much like a multi-channel offering. At which point, urine. I think we should move on.
Urine.
The kidney filters the body's waste products, which we then pass as urine.
You can test aspects of your health from your urine with our health checker online.
Almost 200,000 of you have already taken our My Health Checker urine test, and only 13% of you had perfectly healthy pee, whilst twice as many were seriously dehydrated, so it is worth checking.
The worst culprits were the youngest. 89% of 18 to 21-year-olds who took the test were dehydrated. You should be drinking between 6 to 8 glasses of water a day, more if the weather's hot and when you're exercising. If you don't, you could feel like you've got a hangover, irritable and unable to concentrate.
Almost a third of all people who work in transport would recognise these symptoms, as this occupation shows the most cases of severe dehydration.
Okay, so do you want to pick up on that, Sandra? Do you want to talk any further about that?
Well, I mean, it's just an illustration. I think, as Sandra covered, the way that process works is each week we look at the results that have come in through My Health Checker in that instance, and we write a script which we then work on with the TV team. We then get a load of visuals that are drawn up and storyboarded, and by the end of the week we've got our VT that goes in for that week. And so it's that data all comes from the website. We then feed it all in to we produce it kind of separately but alongside the TV team, because you don't want to get everything caught, they're busy as well, they're doing all of their stuff. So we kind of do it in a separate silo. But at key points, the series producer, the exec producer of the TV show will come in and will make sure that they're happy editorially with the tone and everything. And then we get it ready and it goes out on Tuesday, and we start the whole process again. But it's just a sort of neat example of how we actually, just a little integrated element. It's just one of the elements of the show, but it's completely driven by the data that we've captured online through our health checker. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I think we'll move into the development period now. This was probably the first Primetime show to use Skype and sort of video conferencing technology in quite such an extensive way, and to sort of hang the show to such a degree on it. So if it would be interesting to look at both, what worked out well during the development, but also some of the trickier bits. Do you want to pick that up?
Yeah, sure. So I guess a lot of this is more related to Series 1, because that's when we really developed that idea of using Skype. Excuse me. So we obviously talked to Skype in the first instance, and they were quite impressed with our ambitious plans, because they had never done a 1-hour primetime show before. And I guess we have to clarify that people call us, and they first speak to someone who helps them prep and prepare for about to go on to TV, make sure all the setup is correct. Then they speak to the people in the studio, the doctors, and then they get aftercare, so they speak to other doctors. So there's one call has to go through quite a few different steps, so it's a bit more complicated than it might look on screen. So when we started developing it, in the first instance, we just practiced in the office, to be fair, and we got some switcher boxes, and we were just pretending to be a studio and had lots of people calling us, and we practiced that, and then Channel 4 wanted us to do a pilot. So we did a pilot in a small studio in London, and again, we learned lots through that, how it works, how best to do it. And there's some particular tricky things which I think might be worth highlighting. And one of those is definitely the quality of the call. It's so difficult because you're so dependent on the other person, on the contributor. And the other problem is, of course, that lots of people have absolutely no idea about their internet setup. So you might be asking them questions about their bandwidth or the speed, and they look at you as if you've gone mad. So we definitely found that difficult, and it's definitely a learning process, how to prep someone who isn't in any way technical to be able to understand what you want from them, what you need from them. And the other thing, of course, is that internet speed varies from different points in the day. Like, we did lots of rehearsals during the day. Things looked amazing. You ring them up at 8 o'clock at night, and it's a disaster. You have to just... There's no predictability, so you have to constantly rehearse for every single scenario. And we also ended up giving or sending out quite a lot of cameras and mics, because you just can't rely on what people have at home. So there's a lot of pre-preparation involved, that you find your contributors and you send them stuff and you rehearse with them. I mean, you can't, obviously, if someone calls in live and you don't have the time to do that, all you can do is help them maybe move their computer, close the curtains, remove the clutter from the background. So you have to do it within
There's
limits.
a fair proportion that are on the night calls, aren't there?
Yes,
There's a combination,
and so those you are sort of stuck with what they've got. But you can definitely tweak it. You can make it work. And then the other thing that we worked out is the timing of the reveal, which might sound silly, but obviously everyone calls in to show you something. And do you do that? Do they sit there with their illness right there as soon as the call starts, or do they get undressed and show you something? And obviously, because you don't have the luxury of a guy with a boom, the sound issues are terrible, because as soon, if you're talking like this, as soon as they stand up to show you their foot, the shot is all over the place, the sound issues are strange. So you have to, with every call, you have to sort of run through with the person where they're going to sit, how they're going to do the reveal. And then obviously you have to be conscious that if it's an issue on someone's breasts or something, you don't want to have them sitting there being uncomfortable, so you have to sort of work out how to do it as quickly as possible and as best as possible. And even there on the live show, we have come, into awkward situations before, because sometimes Skype freezes, which is fine because the sound generally continues and it's fine. But in one live show, we had one guy who was meant to really quickly reveal something on his penis and then sit down again. And of course, as luck would have it, just as he was showing us his penis, well, us, the whole of the UK, his penis, the camera froze. But he was still talking, so he just had a penis on live TV with the guy in the background chatting. So there are things like that. It's incredibly unpredictable. You just need to try and practice and rehearse and have backup plans and during the day we do record a few people, and they go through the whole process. They get a consultation with a doctor and things, so there is something in it for them, but they generally don't get broadcast. But it's nice to have a few banked, because if something goes horribly wrong with Skype or what have you, you need to obviously put out a show at 8 o'clock. So it's things like that. I mean, it is quite common sense, but it's just a long development process to learn how best to make it work for you and the type of show you're doing and the type of content you need.
I mean, it's unusual. This is very particular in having such big kind of technical challenges and pushing the envelope so much on the technical front. But I don't think that should sort of dominate our discussion, because it's just... it's just an element. But what's important about it, I think, is it is actually those things that go wrong, is those kind of artifacts of liveness that actually are the thing that give it its energy. When you watch the show, when you get overlapping dialogue or little audio glitch, or one of the feeds goes off for a second and then it pops back up and all that stuff, it would be way worse if that wasn't there, really, because that's the thing that really gives you that feeling of certain jeopardy and a real kind of energy to the thing. So I think it's really essential. What's quite interesting was that when it came to the sort of broadcast period, when we did the very first show, that we had a bit of that sort of stuff. We were doing things technically that had never been done before. So there were certain things we found, like kind of audio feedback loops that would cut out the people's ability to hear at the other end and things. So there was a few teething troubles. But it went from being, what was described as a real kind of dog's dinner, and this is internally within Channel 4, They were quite.
We didn't know that.
No, thanks.
No. You know, well, you will remember. You know, there was a real question about whether it would go on to, you know, episodes 2 and 3. But these were really quite kind of minor things, and we really were treading ground. I'm not sure if it was completely understood at the time, but we were really sort of treading ground that just hadn't been done before. So the fact that some stuff like that happened is, you know, it was unpredictable and unanticipatable, and it really didn't matter in the sense that it was able to be fixed by episode 2 with a lot of work, hard work from people at both ends, and you know, particularly on the edit, you know, the TV commissioner, Kate Techman, massive hard work, sort of just refining the editorial and so forth, and likewise all hands on deck at the Maverick end. But you know, with it, as we moved on to episodes 2 and 3, it then became the best thing since sliced bread. So, you know, one of the things, and that's why we called the talk about, you know, mentioned the highs and lows, but it really did have that manic, depressive kind of quality of going from the depths of despair to you know, the height of joy and success in a very short amount of time. What else would you like to talk about in terms of the development? What struck you?
I think one of the things that also struck me was obviously that it's quite a big leap forward for your contributors, because, you know, they're probably, I mean, obviously every contributor tends to be new to something, but doing it on Skype was very difficult for them in the sense that the time delays, that, you know, you have that awkward moment, they're not quite sure when they're meant to talk, and then the presenter starts talking and they stop talking, and so I think for them this is also like a new challenge, and they haven't really seen it before, so that was an interesting way to learn how to prep people for that, because obviously you know how to prep someone for shooting a VT package, but this is a whole new way of learning how to interact with your contributors, so that was a challenge. But
and also, of course, the important thing is you have to, the absolute key thing is that the first time that the contributor talks to the doctors must be live on air at, you know, 8:20 or whenever. Even if because obviously people can apply for the show at any time. They can apply for the show midweek and be queued up effectively to actually sort of like be on the show. But they can't at any point have talked to the doctors, because the whole premise of the show would fall down, because, you know, you need to have that immediacy. And so it's very sort of like difficult, because you have to go through all of this process, but the first time that they will actually talk properly about their problem is live on air, and you just never know how someone's going to react to that. And so we have an amazing team of researchers who, many of them have been working on Embarrassing Bodies for years, actually, and it's important to say, you know, Embarrassing Bodies is a Birmingham-based production. The I don't know if it was actually the inside of the hospital you saw at the start, but it is it's shot in a specially purpose-built studio in the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, which is one of the newest hospitals in the UK. And because it's a regional production, that allows staff, it's slightly different to the sort of the freelance market in London. We tend to have a lot of staff that have worked on on this project for many years, and they have a really good relationship. They know how to talk to contributors about the most sort of, you know, embarrassing and difficult things. And it's even more important with the live show, because in this main series, you know, you can always, if people are feeling a bit, you know, sort of, you know, they're not sure they actually want to, you know, go through with it, they're not sure about being on TV, then you've got time to talk them through. And of course, you know, if at the end of the day they don't want to do it, then that's fine. But with Skype, you can only take them, with the Skype show, you can only take them so far. And then at the end, you know, it is just them and the doctors live, and they have to be in a comfortable and happy place that they're actually going to get a result that's good for them. And that's where the aftercare is absolutely vital, because, of course, you know, they do only get 90 seconds talking to the doctor. They can inevitably are only going to get a bit of advice. But what you actually see, that's more for the benefit of the audience at home. The actual payoff for the people actually contributing is what happens afterwards when we hand them over to the GPs, when often they'll go off and have follow-up treatment. And in fact, we'll show a clip later of how that process has worked, because for this series, we've started following up and bringing people back in 2 weeks later to actually, so they Skype in again and talk about what they've been doing. And that's been a development which has been really, really well received, because it does give far more of a sense of closure to the stories, which is really important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, you know, obviously when we're in the territory here of factual programming rather than pure documentary, but it is quite interesting to look at what role narrative does play. And I think this idea that you get these stories that actually run across the series, often with a couple of weeks in between while medical stuff is going on, is quite an interesting development. And you start to you feel that this is something that is woven together with all these individual stories. So I think I need to give a bit of a health warning for the next shot. So look away if you're squeamish.
There's some surgery involved as well. Surgery. So just at that point, please glance up at this lovely ceiling and think of England.
But this is a good example of that kind of narrative thread. But it's also a good example of the kind of impact this thing is making. Because I should point out, when this case study was first on in an earlier episode, the whole programme trended #1 on Twitter, but so did something particular to this case, which I won't spoil the story by telling what it was. But even that individual thing that was particular to this case also trended on Twitter, so it's very much a sort of talking point. And also, just to give you a kind of sense, so this Tuesday, I think it was episode 5 of 8, second series, it got the best part of 3 million viewers opposite a Euro 2012 football match. So it is really quite a scalable thing, a sort of large-scale thing. And also, to give you another sort of take on that, we launched some iPhone apps for this series, and we had 500,000 downloads after 2.5 weeks of these iPhone apps. So what's great about it is that it's something that has real reach and impact and scale and punch, and it's really making a difference out there because of its scale. The other thing about its scale is that it becomes a fantastic platform for experiment. Also, let's push on into the broadcast period, and I think we'll again look at what worked well and what was a bit more tricky. On the upside, I think the integration of online with TV editorial is always a sort of key one, so that might be a good one to pick up on. Just the integration of TV and online
definitely. No, it's sort of what we touched on before. That relationship works so well, and so straight away after the broadcast, after the show has gone out, we work overnight, and we take all the cases from the program and put them up as case videos online, and we add extra links and extra content to them. So it has to be a really quick turnaround, because obviously people watch something at night, they might talk about it with their friends at work, and then probably come lunchtime they're on the website looking for that specific clip. So we edit the whole program into clips overnight, stick all on the website, add links, and again, because we work so closely with the TV program, we know obviously exactly what we're getting, and we can already on the night start prepping all these links and the additional information and things like that. So for us, the brilliant content we're getting on the website has been a godsend. We've got nearly 100 case videos on the website so far from amazing footage from the program. So that side for us has obviously worked incredibly well.
I mean, also again, if you want to get a sense of scale of it, again, just going from the latest figures, so it's kind of mid-series. On Tuesday night, so between when the show went out at 8 o'clock and midnight when the stats finished for the day, there was 500,000 page views on the site. And then yesterday, it was Wednesday, yesterday, there was a further sort of 300,000 page views. So you can see there clearly that, a certain amount of activity happens there and around the show, but it does commonly spill into the next day, where people might be kept watching on demand, or they might just be following up what they watched the night before. So that's very much the sort of dynamic, big hit around the show, but it does tail straight into the next day. One of the sort of trickier things that happened during broadcast was that, that initial positioning of the show changed quite radically. Partly because of a scheduling thing. What they realised was that they could really boost the viewing figures of the live show by playing it alongside the existing brand that was well known and loved, and you know, you had this new show which didn't carry the Embarrassing Bodies brand. It was just called Live from the Clinic, and they could see that the two things actually worked really well when scheduled together. And so mid-series, that initial positioning was kind of reversed, and where it was designed to sort of spin off and create its own new thing with new presenters and all that, it actually decided that it worked very well within the existing brand, so it got Embarrassing Bodies prefixed to the title, and that's how it's continued. But that sort of thing, that sort of stuff happens all the time, and you've got to be quite light on your feet. If you ever look at the Embarrassing Bodies website, you'll see, once you actually get to the website, and that it still carries the name Embarrassing Illnesses. That was just because there was a sort of 11th hour change of title, as is, you know, the way in television, and it's too late to do anything online. So 6 years later, it still says Embarrassing Illnesses. It doesn't make any practical difference because you don't have to use that URL when you're interacting with the site in any way. It just happens, you know, if you look up at the top, you'll notice that it's got that. But all that sort of stuff, you just have to roll with the punches, and that was the same with the repositioning of the show. So the way we've actually structured it with its own website, which was kind of distinctive, if you'd have been starting from scratch, you might not have done it like that, and you might have integrated it into the existing Embarrassing Bodies website, but it was supposed to be its own thing, have its own look and feel, so that wasn't an option at the time. So you just have to kind of deal with that stuff as it happens in the optimum way, and that's just the way of the world. Do you want to pick up on that? Or do you
the other, I just wanted something else. The other thing that we also did was obviously when you're doing a live show and you're inviting people to contact you and get in touch or be on the Skype call, you do get inundated. So one of the other things we did was we have live consultations. It's on that website. And we mention those a lot in the program, and we basically take the specialist who's in the TV show that week, but also some additional GPs. And we allow people to ask us all of their questions online and provide bespoke answers to them. So that's just like another sort of way, I guess you have to be slightly wary that obviously if you make a whole live show about people getting in touch with you, they will get in touch with you, and you need to have ways to then make that worthwhile. And you can't, because we can only have maybe, gosh, like 12, say, Skype cases in one episode. This is a way that we can get through, you know, hundreds of questions. So it's just sort of, again, how the website in that case can support the editorial of the TV show and give something back. And it's incredibly successful. So it's a lovely way of giving more people medical advice.
So it's really just making sure, as with all multi-platform stuff, you have to be looking out for different kinds of viewers and users to engage with it. You may have the ones that, you know, dive in all the way and take the plunge and go on screen, but they're the tiny minority, and that's not really what it's about. You've absolutely got to cater for the people that just want to watch and sort of look on from afar, but you also want to be able to cater for people that want to be kind of semi-active or and sort of engage to the degree that they might want to ask someone a question about something that's on their mind. So we took a sort of traditional form of the web chat, and we transformed it into what we called live consultations, and we had specialist doctors in these web chats, and the team at Maverick created a super streamlined process, because normally with a web chat it's quite a dull and a sort of slow affair, because someone's lucky enough to get their question answered, and then someone has to sit there and type it, and you know the expert has to tell the person that's typing it what to type, and it's all serial and doesn't really, you know, kind of flow. And at Maverick, they very quickly got the bit between their teeth and worked out how they could just crack through the maximum amount of stuff for the maximum amount of people. So they aggregated questions, they looked out for trends in questions, and then...
As he was in the studio 4 weeks ago when we spoke to this young man.
As a mass, and they worked out a way that was much more kind of parallel.
How can we help?
So you just went bam, bam, bam with the answers. And there was a sort of certain pride within the Maverick team because they found out what's the maximum number of questions that have ever been answered in an hour-long web chat, and then they set out to break it, which they massively did.
We're really geeky. That was like the highlight of the day.
So in the course of an hour, you know, they'd get through sort of 80, 90 questions, which is kind of unheard of. Sorry, not 79 you got through the other night, I think it was. You know, that's incredible, really, in the course of an hour to get through, you know, some very quick answers and some more, you know, more discursive ones. But it's just because they've sort of got this live consultation just down to a very fine art. And also, it's really important about how you talk to that community. So there's a lot of thought that goes into recognising that people are in, recognising them for having sent in questions and explaining that the way that the questions are being sort of answered in groups, and so you've got a real sense that what you contribute is valued, and if your question gets answered, you know, that's fine, but also there's a sort of a clear explanation of why not everything is going to get answered, but we'll get through as much as possible, and there's constant thanking people for their contributions, and that sort of thing is really good practice for that kind of user-generated, communal kind of activity.
We do have the clips now.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, brilliant.
So we'll go back to, you haven't missed the surgery, you'll be pleased to know.
You haven't been spared.
We've already been keeping Paul busy as he was in the studio 4 weeks ago when we spoke to this young man. How can we help you, Ben?
About 2 years ago, I had a piercing done, and then I went and played a rugby match.
Where is this piercing, first of all?
Sorry, it's down on my penis. It was a Prince Albert piercing.
Oh, right, okay. I've crossed my legs, Ben, already. Carry on, please.
I went into a tackle, I felt a sharp pain, looked into my shorts, and I saw a ring that wasn't in my penis.
Do you mind showing us?
No, of course
You're
I'll
right with
get
that?
out.
Just hold it nice and still. Oh. What I can see, Ben, is the ring went through the hole in the end of your penis and has literally ripped out, and I can see quite a lot of scar tissue in the bottom.
Take a seat, Ben.
I think you're going to need a surgeon. Would that be all right?
Well, there is no other option. If he wants to pee without spraying everywhere and ejaculate normally, then we do need to close up his meatus. You know, the opening at the end is just splayed open like a sort of fish mouth. So, I mean, yeah, that's the sort of thing which I see and I can fix fairly easily.
We arranged for Ben to meet up with Mr. Anderson in person at the Ramsey West Midlands Hospital.
Let's have a careful look.
On examination, the tear and white scarring left by the ripped piercing were evident.
What I need to do is to basically cut out the nasty whitish areas there and close the thing across to get the opening, what we call the meatus, back to its normal size.
2 weeks later, Ben is in theatre for this operation. First, Mr. Anderson needs to remove the white scar tissue left by the piercing.
The issue is now trying to remove that tissue from something that is slippy, circular, shifting around a lot. So this is the scar tissue coming off now, with nice, healthy bleeding tissue here, which means it will heal.
It takes over an hour in theatre till Mr. Anderson is pleased with the result.
I've now just finished the final layer of stitches between there, and there you can see his opening, which has now gone back to a normal size. I look forward to seeing him in clinic probably in about 10 days. A perfect penis.
Well, that was just 10 days ago, and Ben joins us now. Hi, Ben.
Hi.
So, have you got a perfect penis now, Ben? That's what we all want to know.
In my opinion, yes, it's back to normal. It's perfect for me.
I'm glad to hear it. And how was the whole procedure and the recovery?
Obviously a bit groggy after the surgery, a bit achy, but all in all, perfect now, completely fine.
Wow. Shall we have a look and see how it looks now?
Yeah, you can do.
Yeah.
So you were pleased with the result, were you, Paul?
Yes, I mean, I saw him just a few hours ago remove his catheter. Things have healed up nicely. It looks a bit bruised. All the sutures you see now will dissolve. I think we've got some photos, haven't we?
I can't see much there. Let's have a look at some still. I know we took some stills of it, of sort of before and after pictures to remind us, should we need reminding about that injury. Well, you can see on the left that scar tissue, wide, very, very wide opening, and that was why he was getting those infections and stinging. And the other side, wow, what a neat job.
It will look even better in a couple of months. It will look normal.
Once those sutures have dissolved.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm very glad Paul managed to sort you out. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Nice to see you again. Bye-bye.
What's quite interesting about that clip is some of the elements that we've touched on in terms of things like quality and what to do when things don't quite work out are quite neatly illustrated by that. Because in that circumstance, obviously, you may have noticed there was quite a big disparity between the quality of the call in his initial consultation and in his second one. And the reason for that was his first one was actually done from home, but his second one, because he'd actually been for his latest operation in Birmingham that day, he actually did the second call from another location. I don't know where it was, but you can see that obviously the broadband line wasn't as good, and so it was a bit annoying when that came up on air, and it just wasn't, it just wasn't as crisp, wasn't as good, especially when you'd seen it already in the BT package. But that's where having the backup of making sure that if you've got time, getting people to submit photos, that's part of the application process, because it just means that if you do lose the Skype signal, or and it's towards the end of the consultation, or there is like that, you literally can't see what they're trying to show you. You can always refer to the pictures, and obviously for the audience at home, that's vital really, because it doesn't really do anyone any good if they can't actually see what the doctors are describing or what the person's trying to show. So those are just part of the kind of sort of the backup systems and everything that we put in place.
Do you want to add anything in terms of the just thinking about the sort of the results and the sort of the impact of the show, both series?
I wanted to say a little bit about my video doctor, and then talk about so we work closely with the NHS on both Embarrassing Bodies, Life from the Clinic, other projects, and one of the things we did for Embarrassing Bodies was make Life from the Clinic. It was make 6 symptom checkers, which are video based. And it's filmed with the 3 doctors, and it's like a one-on-one consultation. So it's like things like male sexual health, female sexual health, cold and flu. So if you have a problem, you can log online, start one of these symptom checkers, answer a series of questions, and get personalized feedback. And we built this with the NHS. And the idea is basically that every time someone uses one of these symptom checkers, it saves the NHS money, because they do not go and see their GP. So there's obviously a saving every time someone gets help through these symptom checkers. So far over the series, it was mentioned in the clip, but actually so far we've saved £700,000. So I think that, as a result for the TV show, is huge, because it just shows that you can actually build a legacy, build a platform that people can continue to go to, and actually help themselves get good medical advice, and in the process save a bit of money along the way. So I think that's one of the things that we're really pleased with, that is done so well, and that's still obviously ongoing on the site now.
I think that's a good example, because it also shows where having a televisual sensibility and bringing that to the party here really helps, because basically all we did was we took these symptom checkers that the NHS had developed anyway for online, and we just thought there's got to be a more
better way,
engaging and colourful way to do this. So we brought the on-screen talent to transform what had been a text-based thing into a face-to-face consultation with the 3 embarrassing doctors that that the audience know and love. So they're sitting there and they're saying, was it that big or that big? Was it blue or was it red? And you just click through in a very smooth process. And then, as Sandra said, each of those outcomes has an actual value to the NHS. So if they end up going to their GP, that has no sort of zero value in that context. But if they end up going to see the pharmacist instead, that saves a bit of money. If they go to A&E, that costs a bit of money. And overall, as Sandra was saying, the balance over the series has been over 700,000. But it can't, so in a way, one of these, we've also used this series as a way of literally pathfinding for the NHS and for health provision in the country. So that's another aspect of what this is all about. Around the country, doctors have really been looking at this closely, because the idea of doing consultations over video links is very much a real-world one, but it hasn't been practiced very much yet. So the medical profession have found real interest in seeing how it works in this context. Excuse me. I think it's also important, especially if you're coming from a TV perspective, to think a little bit about the whole idea of life cycle. TV has a sort of particular attitude and understanding of time, which is sort of, has for years been dominated by overnight ratings. And I suppose these days it stretches out a whole 30 days or 7 days or 30 days because of on-demand services. But the online stuff is there between the series, before the series, after the series. And you need to plan for that. It's not, because you can't really park these things up and just leave them. They don't totally take care of themselves. So can you give a little bit of insight into that side of things about the sort of the multi-platform sensibility with regard to life cycle?
Well, I mean, we've covered a lot of the different elements that kind of live on after the show finishes broadcasting. So obviously, My Video Doctor is a great example of that. All of our live consultations are all archived so that you can then go back and go look through the questions and see them and read them, after they've actually sort of finished broadcasting live. But we have across the sort of, it's like we call it a sort of family of embarrassing body sites, because now you have the Life in the Clinic site, you have the embarrassing body site, we have a site which is specifically focused on the Teenage Body series, which is a series that's been on twice, and also a kids health site as well. And all of those sites have all of their different, they have at their core condition guides, so you can go on and you'll get a kind of embarrassing bodies take on a particular condition, which generally is much more kind of sort of bite-sized than the NHS stuff, but also sort of kind of says it as it, sort of tells it as it is, not sort of like trying to use overly medical terminology. It's kind of just a digest. But crucially, we also, the NHS data is actually pulled into our own site, so you actually don't have to go out to get the kind of the real hard science. It appears there on our site as well in a kind of an include, which in itself seems like a simple thing to do for anyone who does websites. But when we first integrated it 3 or 4 years ago, that was a big deal. Working with NHS Choices to make that work and make it sure it updated. But it kind of, what that does is it makes the embarrassing body site actually a useful health resource with good, hard medical information at its core. Although there's plenty of stuff in the site where we're just talking sort of quite generally about editorial things. If you want advice about, what the treatments are for acne, you can get all of that on the embarrassing body site, and a lot of people feel more comfortable getting that information from Channel 4 and Embarrassing Bodies than they do from the NHS, even though the NHS is an incredibly trusted brand. But it's a kind of counterintuitive thing. It's the same way that it's one of the reasons why people come on the show, come on live from the clinic. They want to talk to our doctors more than they want to talk to their own doctors. Now, why that would be the case, anyone might think, well, that seems crazy, but they see them, they trust them, and maybe they've had a bad experience with their own doctor. Most of the time, it's not that at all. They want to talk to Dr. Dawn or Dr. Christian or Dr. Pixie about it, rather than their own GP, and we can kind of open up the NHS sort of systems to them through that initial stage, whether it's through My Video Doctor, or whether it's through a live Skype consultation, or whether it's just through reading a condition guide on our website. We kind of act as a sort of, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, but kind of just a sort of friendly gatekeeper, and then we can actually, they'll then sort of plug into all of those great resources that are already out there, and of course we signpost those throughout the site as well. So it's worked incredibly well, and I think we do continue to get massive amounts of traffic, even when the show's not on air.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth pointing out that the NHS Direct and NHS Choices, they actually look at embarrassing bodies and live from the clinic as their number one competitor and also their number one referrer. So it's quite big on the landscape in the UK now in terms of preventive approaches to healthcare. To just get us to the questions, I'd just like to sort of wrap up by asking Alex, and Sandra what the main thing is that they've learnt from doing this project.
Do you want to go first?
No, you can go first.
I think I mentioned all the things we've learned throughout, I guess. Really briefly, I guess Skype is a bit stressful to work with. As you've seen, things can go wrong and things, but no, it's been really good fun and interesting. And I guess the number one thing is definitely that you need to be so closely integrated with the TV program, because without the website and the TV people working side by side, I think you'll never achieve anything like this. So that's the main, we already knew this, but that's the main thing. We keep relearning every time we do a project like this, just how key that is.
Yeah, it's really critical, both in terms of how the people work together and how the editorials work together. So I think that's a really important point. What about you, Alex?
I would say Adam touched on it earlier, but the importance of refreshing the brand from series to series and in between series as well online is absolutely vital, because things do change, especially when you're dealing with the technology side of things. New things happen all the time. We have only just started doing apps. We could have done apps. We did start talking about it probably a couple of years ago, but we felt that the numbers of people that were actually accessing them, it didn't justify the kind of sort of expenditure at that point. But once it was suddenly sort of a mass market thing, we realised this was an area we should be exploring and a tool that we should be accessing. So I think that's be prepared to kind of to always sort of try new things and use those new platforms and technology, but don't necessarily forget that you are trying to talk to a mass market, and it probably comes down to with the experience of Embarrassing Bodies Live versus Live from the Clinic. It's very different making a show for a niche engaged audience to making a show for a mass audience. We had, I think it was about 75,000 viewers for Embarrassing Bodies Live, which, as Adam pointed out, was the similar sort of figure to what was happening on most multi-channels. But, we knew that those were engaged viewers because they had to consciously come onto the site, they were watching, we could see the numbers of questions being submitted, and the show could work for them in a particular way. But as soon as you're suddenly making a show for 3 million people on Channel 4 at 8 p.m, you have to understand that most people aren't going to want to interact. Most people are still coming to the show to be entertained. That's the main reason. And so you have to then, if necessary, row back on some of the elements that you might think is really cool, interesting stuff that would work if it was just web only, and maybe sort of allow some of the more traditional elements to come to the fore. But then you've got to think, well, how can we still integrate these elements? So that's where we sort of brought in a lot more of the live consultations, where so the questions are asked on the site; they're not asked within the show, because otherwise that would make for a pretty dull show. Text just doesn't work particularly well as a visual medium. So that would be, I suppose, sort of my sort of key thing is, with those two points. I would say.
I think I'd be. I wouldn't want anyone sort of going away from this session feeling that it's primarily about tech or geekiness, because I don't think it is at all. I think the main thing I've learnt from the experience of working on this is really about getting that real kind of editorial coherence between what you're doing on TV and on the screen, always using the right medium, using each medium to its greatest strength, because they do very different things. And I think most important, also not to lose sight that this, it's entertainment. You can be a lot too kind of po-faced about this. So I think focusing on this live thing, a lot of what that's been about is about, the energy of it and the fun of it, and the way that you can use that energy and that entertainment to very good and strongly public value kind of outcomes. But you don't need to sacrifice the entertainment dimension of the programme to achieve that. I'd like to open it up to any questions or any thoughts that have flowed from that, if anyone's got anything that they want to pick up on. you had half the answer to the $64 million question, which everyone asked, and which I so wish I had a tenner for each time I'd been asked it, about why people would dream of going on such a thing. But there are lots of other questions we could talk about as well. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. In terms of budgets, the way it works is that the certainly at Channel 4 is that there are two separate budgets. There's a TV budget, and the multi-platform is a separate budget. You do occasionally get grey areas. So, for example, in this current series, there's a number of visualizations, sort of graphic visualizations that have been done. You could probably sort of argue the case for that cost to have been in either side, but in fact there was kind of an economy of scale doing the TV graphics and these online visualizations together. So, and ultimately it's all kind of coming out of the same pot, so no one's really that bothered. So you do get a little bit of overlap, but by and large they're quite distinct. And they reflect the fact that we tend to work in pairs, so there would be a TV commissioner and a multi-platform commissioner on projects like this. Your other question, I mean, it's a slightly strange one because of that sort of shift of emphasis mid-flow on the first series of Live from the Clinic. The prospect of having a completely sort of independent spin-off was a very exciting one, but it's quite sort of webby, really, to be as responsive as that, to sort of recognise mid-series that, in fact, the thing just had more impact and worked better, sort of presented in it from a particular angle. So to sort of change midstream in that way is very much how everything works on the web. It's such an iterative medium, so we kind of take that in our stride, really. And it just adds another dimension to embarrassing bodies to keep the whole thing fresh. And one of the things that what's been brilliant for me from embarrassing bodies as a whole is that as it's established itself as a sort of pretty large-scale proposition, and particularly on the multi-platform side, what it's meant is that each year we've been able to experiment, and we've been able to experiment in quite a strategic way. So in fact, what I've been doing, and it's not a formal process at all, but I listen to what the organisation, Channel 4's strategic imperatives are each year, and I usually use that as a cue for what I ask the embarrassing bodies guys to do. So last year we made that my health checker app that you saw there with all the stats that you could. That's because we were starting to. There's just a massive emphasis internally on the use of statistics and use of statistics with regard to our relationship with our viewers, but also how it fits into the whole picture of entertainment as well. So that was our experiment that year. We looked at what we could do with data that would be entertaining, but that would also prove the quid pro quo at the heart of data issues around television, which is about people giving up information about what they watch and what they like and all that stuff. There needs to be something that they get back in return. So we were really trying to prove that point that, you know, if you give away a service that's good enough, people won't just give you their name and their email address, but they'll tell you, you know, what weight they are, what height they are, what ethnicity they are, all of that stuff. Not that we were using it for any, we weren't sort of commercially exploiting that, but it was just to prove the point that if you give away something good enough, then the whole issue of having that kind of database relationship with the TV audience is not a problem. It's only if you start asking for stuff in a random way that they can't see why they should engage with it that it becomes a problem. This year, the challenge was, what does Embarrassing Bodies Mobile look like in 2012, because we'd already done sort of mobile stuff right back at the beginning, but we hadn't revisited it. So that's how the apps came about. And that's just been, we didn't know what the take-up would be. It's phenomenal, really. I mean, the only Channel 4 app that's larger than these embarrassing bodies ones is the 4OD one, which is a sort of very big generic thing. But otherwise, it's just performed, they performed incredibly. And we were very much kind of pushing the barriers on that front as well, because we had quite a sort of tussle with Apple to get those through, because, you know, if you're going to show someone how to do a breast check, you have to show a breast. Likewise for a ball check. So we had a bit of that to deal with. And then in the previous years, we looked at the whole issue of live, because we could see that, you know, even with things like £1 Million Drop, live TV and interactivity go together very well, because you can impact on the editorial there and then. So that's how Embarrassing Bodies Live came about, really. That was our kind of, it was a big theme for that year. Plus it was something that Maverick were very keen to explore. So yeah, that's it. It's a great platform for experimentation, and that's what we'll keep on doing, really. You know, each time we go out with a series, we'll try and think of another angle and another direction to take it in. Your question, sorry.
It was a budget one, so
Oh, okay. The budgets are, you know, there's quite a disparity between TV budgets and online budgets. So, yeah. Yeah, but we architect it in a way. I mean, there has been, if you take it as a cumulative commitment, it's quite big. I've never sort of sat down and added it all up over the years, but it's, you know, it's been a very worthwhile investment, whatever it is. But we also architect things to sort of minimise the overheads, really, because of that, what I was talking about, life cycles before. You know, it's an organic, growing thing. You can't totally leave it alone, but you can minimise the amount of input you need to keep the thing energetic. And most of the energy comes from the discussions between the audience. So it's not that there's a big discussion going on between Channel 4 and the audience. It's actually an intra-audience discussion where all these comments and questions and stuff that drive the website come from. And so that's good, because that, you know, you've got moderation costs, but in fact with Embarrassing Bodies, it was pre-moderated at the beginning, so everything was looked at before it went live. But because people behaved well and people weren't messing about, it's actually post-moderated now, so everything gets published immediately. We keep a kind of a general eye on it, and people can flag up anything that's sort of offensive or whatever. So that's another sort of example of how, you know, it's not a fixed thing in a can. That approach to moderation has changed over time, which is quite a sort of radical thing, because, you know, it's a risky area. So, are there any other questions? Yes, the lady at the back. Yeah.
And we go through all the official processes that you would imagine, you know, all the legal context, the prepping, the making sure they know what they're getting involved with, what it entails. So in that sense, we've never had any problems, because we just prep them so well and cover off all the legal aspects that way. The one extra editorial thing we do is we obviously take cases and put them online, and sometimes, you know, you can just tell when viewing the clip that like we had a lady who was thinking about a breast reduction. It was just quite obvious that although she wanted to get the advice, she was very happy to do that, she was a bit shy or what have you. So then we make editorial decisions not to put those people online. It's not a legal problem at all, but obviously, you know, you want to just be courteous to people. But no, we don't have any legal problems, because the program is so well prepped, and there's a massive team of people prepping, doing all the legal steps, recording them, recording permissions.
I mean, one of the problems, or not problem, because it's what we have to do, but when you're doing stuff live, is because we at the start we we wanted to try and do a very stripped down contributor release form, to sort of try and get it down to just a couple of paragraphs. And we to and fro between our legal team and the Channel 4 one, trying to sort of work out how could we do this. In the end, we just couldn't do anything but a very, very long form, because you have to go through all of the stages. And of course, it's like when you take out a financial package online, you have to talk through all of the clauses and make sure they understand it. And so from a program maker, that's a frustration, because it means that you've probably got about a 20-minute legal sort of chat to have with each person. So if someone phones up at 8:35, they're not going to be on this week's show. They need to phone up within the first 15 minutes to be in with a chance, really, unless it's a very straightforward case that we can sort of handle in a slightly more stripped down way. But it's a very long, convoluted process, with, as Sandra says, lots of people doing it, but it does work, and we are able to get people online on the talking to the doctors.
Within TX period.
Within TX period, which was always the aim, and we have, so it's good.
So it's another sort of super honed, super refined process. It's really interesting to see it in operation. I think we've got just time for one more question, if there's a gentleman in the middle. Yeah.
I've done some broadcasting with Skype in Norway, and I know what difficult it is. How do you cooperate with the Skype company?
How do we cooperate with them? So for the development period of the first series, we had lots of meetings with them, and obviously they have to approve sort of what we do, and they wanted to know exactly how we were displaying nudity and what the context was and things like that. So in the beginning, we had lots of meetings with them, but then pretty much thereafter, we sort of did it ourselves. So we practiced ourselves how best to do the calls. We spoke to our own technicians. We worked it out ourselves. So we keep them up to date, but day to day, no, there isn't a massive involvement in a nice way. Like, they let us get on with it.
I mean, we've been quite good about publicising stuff as well.
Yeah, they're great. No, it's been perfect.
They'll retweet us on Twitter and stuff, which is always really sort of helpful. I mean, we do have a dedicated team that is effectively our Skype team. They are because in the first series, that team was part of the kind of the editorial production team, and that was where the sort of the stress of if something's going technically wrong, it would sort of overwhelm the editorial side of things as well, where if you don't want to have the person that's supposed to be trying to talk to the contributors worrying about the fact that
the quality of the
call is going down. So we've siloed those teams off, and those are handled by two distinct different teams.
But they're not a team that Sky have given us. Skype have given us. Yeah, it's just.
How many calls are you doing at the same time?
Oh God, they can take loads. They have in their room. There's a bank with lots of different people set up taking in calls. So
I think I think it probably 20 calls is about the 20 actually kind of sort of like calls queued up, ready to go, and of course not all of those will be going into the will be going into the show. Some of those will be actually just going to the GPs, because we have a mezzanine with GPs, and if the case can't go into the show for any reason, maybe there's a legal reason why this person can't be talked to, but they could be talked to by a GP, then they'll go there. So off the top of my head, I think it's probably about 20. But then we can be talking to more people through Skype at the same time as that. But then when they sort of go into the system, if you like, they have to be one of the 20 and queued up there. So, but it's that's a whole learning curve of how to do that, because that's not how Skype was set up originally. It's supposed to be between two individuals, but there's been a development process there as well.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks very much for coming. I hope it's been useful, and that one of the perspectives is applicable to where you're coming from, and that you can find ways to pick up from some of the experiences here. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.